as you know, the Grammys the other night featured what was essentially soft pornography. Now, that's really what it was. If you go back to like 1990 and you look at what softcore pornography was at the time, that is what now appears on mainstream television shows in the United States today. And the shift in American life from what was private activity to public activity that must be approved by the public is pretty astonishing. And it's worth tracing for a second, because what we have seen is that there was an argument that went something like this in the 1970s. What I do in my bedroom is my business. And that argument is somewhat convincing. For those of us who just want to live a life where we are left alone by others, the idea that consensual activity between adults in private is basically none of the government's business, and societally speaking, can be condemned by others, but really is not generally the thing that people should be discussing in public. Yeah, that at least is kind of fair, right? There's at least something to that argument. But the argument from what I do in my bedroom is my business to what I do in my bedroom is your business should be celebrated, should be put on a pedestal. And if you refuse to celebrate this and put this on a pedestal, this means that you're a bad person in some way. It is a complete reversal of public morality, because there's a process that is used very often by the political left, and it goes something like this. If you're polite, you'll leave me alone, right? You won't say that my activity in private is sinful. And people go, okay, okay, I guess. And then it goes, well, I want to say what I want to say publicly. And if you say anything, then you're really being impolite. And you say, well, but don't I get to have an opinion? And they say, well, no, if you don't celebrate what I am doing, then you are being impolite. Politeness becomes a weapon. Well, at a certain point, being polite to people who wish to tear down all traditional values is a large-scale mistake. And what we have seen in the United States is the triumph of what some philosophers have called expressive individualism, the idea that you get to do what you want and the rest of the world is supposed to adapt to you. This has been written into our Supreme Court decisions. Famously in Planned Parenthood versus Casey, Justice Anthony Kennedy, one of the worst justices of the modern era, wrote an entire swath of the decision in which he suggested that the Constitution provides us all our own right to define life, liberty, and the nature of the universe. Somehow this also allowed us all to define the nature of human life itself, such that you could kill a baby in the womb. But this idea that you have a right to define the universe around you is ridiculous. It's ridiculous on its face. The universe around you exists. It is an objective reality. You don't have the right to redefine society that is not in accordance with reality. And yet that is exactly what we have been pushing now. Somebody is going to win the cultural battle. Somebody's going to win the cultural space. And the people who have won the cultural space in the cultural battle are the people who have exploited the politeness of traditional conservatives in order to completely tear away any semblance of traditional values. And that's how you end up with what you saw on the Grammys, right? There's some deeper roots to this sort of stuff. And yes, we've seen this sort of nonsense in public for decades at this point. But I think it is fair to say that there is even a step from Britney Spears and Madonna faux making out on the MTV Video Music Awards in like 2003 to people full on simulating lesbian sex on stage in the middle of the Grammy Awards. So if you didn't see it, Cardi B and this is not for youngins. This is not for the children, although the Grammys wouldn't warn you about it, obviously. Actually, this is very good for kids. According to folks on the left, this is just sex positivity. It's excellent. As long as your kids are old enough to know what sex is, then they should also understand that gender is fluid. All forms of sexual behavior are decent and good and non-sinful and ought to be celebrated. And Dr. Seuss is really bad. If I Ran the Zoo is super damaging to your 10-year-old. If your 8, 10, 6-year-old reads If I Ran the Zoo, they will inevitably come away a brutal, vicious racist. But if they watch WAP being performed by a pair of women who, in any other polite company, their behavior would be stripper behavior. I mean, this is stripper behavior on stage with music. I mean, that's what it is. Then that apparently is good for your kids. Or at least it's okay for your kids. At least it's not bad for your kids. If I Ran the Zoo is bad for your kids, this sort of stuff is not bad for your kids, according to the mainstream left at this point. Right? This should be celebrated. It's good. Okay, anyway, here's what that looked like. The heights of Western civilization happening right here. Okay. I mean, it's just unreal. So, obviously, the glories of Western civilization from Beethoven to this in just a couple of 100 years. Really strong stuff. And by the way, commentators suggesting that this sort of stuff is on par with Shakespeare. Sir, I'm not kidding you. There's commentators who have said this. This is on par with Shakespeare. It's like modern Shakespeare. One commentator compared it to King Lear, which makes sense if you were dropped on your head repeatedly as a baby and then smashed by a truck. That makes perfect sense. Okay, so the reason this is relevant is not because this particular video is in and of itself all that important. It is just indicative of a cultural rot that has set in. And so I'm not the only person who believes this. I think tens of millions of Americans believe this, that if you watch this and you don't see cultural rot at work, it's because you don't wish to see the cultural rot at work. That there is a large-scale difference between the music of Duke Ellington and this garbage, right? There is a very, very large-scale cultural difference between the sort of behavior that was celebrated in America's past and the sort of behavior that is celebrated today in America. And the behavior that's celebrated today is the most fringe behavior. It is the most exhibitionist behavior, because that exhibitionist behavior is breaking boundaries, you see. And that's the real key. This is not culture. This is not even counterculture. This is anti-culture, right? It's just garbage designed to tear things down. And that's why it's being celebrated, right? The reason that this is a quote-unquote important song is because it's tearing down cultural barriers to female pleasure, as though female pleasure resides, apparently, in the simulation of lesbian sex on stage at the Grammys, which is a very odd take, to say the least. Okay, so Candace Owens made this point the other day on Fox News. She said that Western civilization is not going to go on much longer if this is the sort of culture we produce. She happens not to be wrong about this. This prompted a spat with Cardi B. For some reason, Cardi B just cannot help responding to Candace Owens. And this prompted a rather fascinating Twitter exchange, mainly in how the media covered the Twitter exchange. So Candace has a brand new show here on Daily Wire. There's a reason you should go subscribe to Daily Wire right now and use promo code Candace to get 25% off. And yeah, I'm not above a shameless pitch for Candace's show, because this is the kind of stuff that Candace does, right? I mean, Candace is going to step into culture wars and she is going to emerge victorious. So Cardi B tweeted out the clip of Candace talking about her dumb, crappy song. And she wrote, "Yay, we made Fox News, guys. Whap, whap, whap." Because she is such, and just like Shakespeare would. Just like Shakespeare would, guys. She's an Aristotelian figure, Cardi B. What an important cultural figure. Candace Owens replied, "Just at me next time directly. You are a cancer cell to culture. Young black girls are having their minds poisoned by what you are trying to package and sell to them as empowerment. I'm one of the few that has the courage to tell you the truth. You should thank me." Okay, that is correct. I'm sorry that Cardi B's behavior is not, in fact, female empowerment. Female empowerment is a woman not turning herself into a sex object for the viewing of men. Because let's be frank about this, that's exactly what Cardi B is doing in that song. A huge number of men are consuming that product in the same way they consumed Playboy in the 1960s. To pretend otherwise is to be ridiculous. Okay, so this conversation continued. She said, "The reason my comments always get you into your feelings is because deep down you know what I'm saying is true. You're in a position to empower young women to aspire to something more than taking off their clothes, but you don't feel that you can be more." Again, not wrong. Okay, Candace continues along these lines. "If you think making your husband a sandwich is a sin, but popping your vagina into another woman's vagina in front of the world is power, you are a lost soul." And that was a response to Cardi B suggesting it was really, really bad that Candace Owens had once said that you should make your husband a sandwich. She said, "You always love to mention my husband's skin tone. So let me ask, what color are the people that are encouraging you to strip in front of the world?" This is a good question. "Who owns your record labels? Who owns CBS and the Grammys? Who made the most money off of your WAP? You sold it to who?" So this is Candace just destroying Cardi B in real time. "Millions of young girls follow you. At your best, you are self-deprecating and humorous. At your worst, you are naked, shoving your vagina into another woman's vagina while thrusting atop her. You are at your worst on the Grammy stage. Do better, Cardi B." Okay, correct. Okay, so Cardi B responds. And then she responds with a fake tweet from Candace, which just shows you what a genius Cardi B is. She's a lyrical genius. She's a behavioral genius. She's incredible at what she does. So she found a photoshopped tweet from Candace. Okay, the photoshopped tweet, and this is something that the left for some odd reason loves doing. They love doing this. They will photoshop a tweet from me saying something I've never said, and then they'll run full stories about this. They actually did this at the AV Club at The Onion, and then never retracted it because this is what they do. So there's a fake tweet from Candace that was going around saying, "Yes, my husband did cheat on me with my brother. Yes, he said no when I asked to join them." Okay, it's a fake tweet. It's an obviously fake tweet. And Cardi B then tweeted out, "Not you talking about two women thrusting their vaginas together while your husband and brother slap bleeps and balls together. Well, would you look at that? Wow." So Cardi B is such a genius, she bought into an obviously Photoshopped tweet. Like a full-on obviously Photoshopped tweet. So Candace replied, "I am literally laughing out loud. Cardi, my dear, that is clearly a Photoshopped tweet. Only one of us has a husband that sleeps around," which is fact check, brutal, but true. Woo. Man, don't get into Twitter fights with Candace, I think is the theme of this particular episode. Wow. Yes, it is. It is. There's a certain irony to the fact that the Cardi B fans are constantly going around analyzing other people's sex lives while Cardi B's husband is engaging in other activities. Cardi B then tweeted back, "This wasn't photoshopped. You was trending the whole day when you tweeted this, and it was published on a lot of blog outlets. You're right, mine sleeps around. Yours sleeps at your home with your brother, bleep boxing while you tweet me." Yeah, so semi-literate response there from Cardi B. And then Candace replied, "What the actual hell are you talking about? Are you dead serious right now trying to substantiate a photoshopped tweet? Asking one more time before I get the lawyers to make you publicly admit you're lying and embarrass yourself." Hey, and then she says, for your information, I do have a brother, a private citizen, who you are slandering right now with this photoshopped image that you are now publicly claiming you saw tweeted in real life. You want to admit you lied now or get sued so I can expose you as a liar? I win either way. Hey, and then Cardi B tries to reply, quote, "Not you being mad at me for what you tweeted and is published on a public blogs. I ain't made it up, honey. Google it yourself." And then she proceeds to tweet out a bunch of bizarre fringe blog websites as substantiation for the idea that Candace tweeted something she clearly did not tweet. So finally, Candace concludes, "Yes, just spoke with my family. I'm 100% suing Cardi for that nonsense. You can't just start throwing out wild lies against private members of my family because you're upset someone called you out on your degenerate performance. I'll keep you all posted." Okay, now, here is the thing. If you look at the headlines in the media today, Cardi B gets completely destroyed in this particular exchange. I mean, just wrecked in this particular exchange. Because, number one, she has no response to the idea that she is not actually acting in an empowering way. She's actually acting in a degrading way toward women. If you wonder if that's true, ask yourself, if a man made that music video of two women acting like that, okay, and the two women were not famous, would that be considered an act of empowerment or an act of degradation? I'm old enough to remember when Robin Thicke's White Line, what was it called? His white, I think it was called White Lines, right? That was the name of the song. I'm old enough to remember when that Blurred Lines, that when Blurred Lines came out, this was considered a deeply exploitative act. Because not only because of the lyrics, but because of the way that women were treated by the camera. Okay, so if you take away what you know about the people who are participating in these particular videos, the videos themselves are objectively degrading. But Cardi B has no response to that, so instead, she proceeds to tweet out a bunch of lies about Candace's brother, who is a private citizen. Cardi B is informed that they're lies, and she continues to double down on that. Now, here is the headline. Let me read you the headlines from our mainstream media, from our establishment mainstream media. Rolling Stone, Cardi B fires back at Candace Owens' criticism of WAP Grammy performance. Cardi B has cheekily fired back at Candace Owens' criticisms of her steamy WAP performance with Megan Thee Stallion at the 2021 Grammys on Sunday. Now, that is some seriously excellent media coverage right there. Right? The story is not Cardi B has no defense for her own behavior, proceeds to level defamatory accusations against Candace's immediate family. Right? That's not the headline. The headline is Cardi B is just clapping back, guys. Just clapping back. Yahoo News. Cardi B and Candace Owens threatened to sue each other after claimed pundit's husband cheated with her brother. Cardi B and Candace Owens' Twitter spat ends with legal threats, said Page 6. It's amazing. Here's the bottom line. Cardi B is a heroine to people who wish to destroy our culture and wish to destroy traditional institutions and wish to destroy traditional values, and so she can get away with anything. That's pretty much the story of this particular exchange. And there is something to this on a broader level, which is that if you are a person who wishes to destroy our culture, if you're a person who wishes to destroy traditional institutions and values, then you are of use to an entire wing of the political side of the aisle. We are in a cultural battle right now to preserve basic ideas like a man is a man and a woman is a woman, and men and women don't have exactly the same roles in all aspects of societies, and that traditional marriage is a good thing, and that decency in sexual behavior is a good thing, and that modesty is a good thing. You know, things that societies have learned over the course of thousands of years are being completely ripped away, and anybody who is of use in ripping away those values is now considered the heroine or hero in any particular exchange. And it doesn't matter what they say or how badly they get wrecked. It doesn't matter what they do. It doesn't matter if they say defamatory things. It doesn't matter if what they are doing is deeply exploitative of themselves and others. None of that matters. The only thing that really matters is what the quest to do is about. And what this is really about is, in the end, making sin public and religion private, right? Making a lack of values the common currency and the common standard, and making values something you're not supposed to say out loud. And if you say values out loud, this makes you a bad person. If you say values out loud, this makes you intolerant and cruel. And people can be as intolerant and cruel to you as they want to be if you say anything about traditional values, because you are being judgmental, you see. They're not being judgmental about you and going after you and wrecking your life and suggesting that you ought not have a job if you disagree with them politically or on values. They are not the aggressors in this culture war, even if they are the aggressors in this culture war. So yes, these things matter. And you can already see the headlines after today's podcast. So Shapiro spends 20 minutes talking about these issues. Right. The reason I spent 20 minutes talking about these particular issues is because they actually matter. Hundreds of millions of people consume this garbage. Hundreds of millions of people. It is garbage with a message. The media know this. If the media didn't think it were important, they would not be pushing it. If the media thought that this was a completely unimportant thing, the media would not be treating it as though it were an important thing. And this is the trick the media love to play. What your left-wing media love to do is treat a fringe element of society as the key to unlocking all freedom in human society. And then when you say, well, no, that doesn't make any sense and that's not good for society, they say, how dare you even notice we're doing this? This is the common theme in the culture wars. The left will take a hill. The right will say, well, do we want to die on that hill? And the left will say, well, you shouldn't die on that hill because the hill doesn't matter. Why are you even noticing we took this hill? And every time the right surrenders the hill, the left takes another hill. There is no limit. There is no end to the hills that the left will take here. Okay, because every hill is a victory for the left in their war against traditional culture, in their war against people who believe in, again, basic things like marriage and purity and innocence and decency and modesty. Like all of these things which societies used to treasure are things that have been considered the reverse of good. They are now sinful and bad in and of themselves. That is where we are at this point in American society, and it is worth noting. It is worth noting who is on the side of people who are publicly performing semi-pornographic acts on stage to the cheers of the media, and who are the people who oppose that and who are considered the villains and who are considered the heroes in these particular situations. Because that's a good way of telling who you don't want near your kids or educating your kids. It's a good way of telling who you don't want with their hand at the tiller of our culture. If you're the type of person who cheers on the WAP performance, but you think that anybody who sounds off against this sort of stuff publicly is the problem, I don't want you anywhere near my kids. And I don't think anybody should want you anywhere near their kids. You shouldn't be educating children. Your value system is perverse. You have a problem. Because let's be frank about this, it is not for you about adults getting to do what adults want to do in the consensual privacy of their own bedroom. It is about cramming down on society a standard of what everybody should do and the kind of behaviors that everybody should engage in and what happiness actually means, which according to too much of our society is simply boiled down to whatever self-identity people choose, mainly rooted in sexual behavior. Life is a lot more than that, as it turns out. And happiness requires a lot more than that, as our hedonistic society is beginning to find out in truly amazing measure. Did you know that every like on this video creates one additional leftist tier? Don't ask me why. That's called science. To take advantage of this amazing opportunity, hit the like button.